say, judgmental at times, right? But you need to have that backing for your study to say that this is a problem. Now, when you have conceptualized the idea, then when you know this is a problem, then that problem statement should lead you to formulating research objectives and research question, and therefore your intended research. Now, what is not a problem? Before we look at what is a problem, maybe it is good to look at what is not a problem. Now, these are all my past experiences when I supervised postgraduate students, and even when I was a review panel for some of the research students. These are the areas that some of them kept using, which is actually can be problematic. Now, number one is lack of study in this area. Some research student will say, this is an area that I need to research into, or this is a particular area or particular tool or particular field that I want to study because there isn't any study. Now, lack of study in an area is not a problem by itself. Why? The question that you have to ask yourself is this a problem? There is no study in this area. Is this a problem? Now, why is there no study in this area? It could be, for example, the contribution expected is not significant. There is no need to have a study in this area. Or maybe there is not much of a contribution. Or maybe it is an area that cannot be researched into. So before you say there is a lack of research in this area, you have to think about all these possibilities and really think seriously about your intended research. The second point that some students mentioned is studies were carried out elsewhere in other countries, but it was not done in my country. Now, the question is, if a lot of studies have been done elsewhere, and they are all saying the same thing, for example, it was statistically significant, what makes your country so different from other countries of the world? So, if you think about this title by itself, it's not significant enough to contribute as a problem, but rather you have to focus on social differences, cultural differences, or maybe legal system differences that would justify your study in a local context.
健达快乐河马，好吃又好玩，健达快乐河马。洗衣就要持久抗菌，72小时除臭抗菌，欧诺白兰4X。
Next one is studies were carried out using a particular type of sample, but mine would use different types of sample. Maybe previous studies were done on adults, but I would try to carry out research on students. Now the question is, what's so different about students compared to adults? So your focus is articulating the differences of the samples, not so much of because different types of samples, but rather you have to explain the characteristics or the differences of this sample. The next one is studies have found some factors, but I want to find more factors. So the question is, at the moment, is this a problem? Research has shown factors affecting, for example, women and entrepreneurship. But is there a problem at the moment? So if there is a problem, then it would be acceptable for you to further research to see whether you can find any new factors. But the question from the examiners is always this. Think about this. Are the existing factors not sufficient to help people to solve the problems? And what makes you think that you can find more factors if a vast amount of research has been done and they have found a lot of factors? So, what is a problem? If I may borrow from the management field. A problem is bad things could happen or already happening, or good things are not happening. Now there are some examples here, three main ones. Difficulties due to unknown factors, or lack of understanding, or lack of tool. Let's take an example of online delivery of courses. Let's say the government wants to formulate some policies to implement online delivery of courses, but the government is not sure as to what factors actually affecting the online learning among students. So therefore, they need to carry out a survey. Another one is probably they want to understand how the policy on online delivery affect parents and students. So they need to have an understanding of situations. So they may need to interview parents or students in order to understand the difficulties that they are facing, the emotional challenges that they are experiencing, and so on and so forth. So usually, lack of understanding will lead to some qualitative approach on the problem. Or it could be a lack of effective tools. Maybe the government is thinking of online delivery, but thinks that there is lack of effective tools that they can use. So therefore, they need to test some new tools that they've developed to see whether it's effective or not. So these are the problems. So you have to ask yourself, does your intended research have this problem? So conclusion, problems in the past. So you need to have quite a good amount of literature review in order to articulate the problems that the field is facing. And that leads to your intended study. How can your study solve some of the problems? So these will be the big picture, and these are the things that I want to share. So I hope you find this short video useful. So remember, when you want to craft your problem statement, you have to keep asking yourself that big question.
Okay, I think this is from years of experience, okay, the wisdom from a well-experienced supervisor, advisor. Okay, so I hope that the years of your wisdom will help you. Okay, so let's go back a little bit here. Why is this so important? Okay. So the first one is, you will see, this is so important because it's like a backbone. It leads you to talk about your research objectives, right? The purpose, the purposes, or if you have more than one, right? The purposes of your study. What is this for? So it comes from this big idea. Instead of problem, all right? So because you are able to identify that problem, then because it's a problem, so here comes the research purpose or purposes, right? And because of that research purposes, I will be able to.
So the idea is that
okay,
you have to look at the
I will be able to, because I want to achieve this research purpose or objectives. And here are 1 or 2 or even 3 research questions for me to address to achieve this research purpose or purposes. Okay, so that's the logic. Okay, so it all starts from identifying a research gap, what we call a problem statement or a statement of a problem. Is that clear? So this is what we say about research gap. Okay, and then here, all right, I think what the supervisor is trying to remind us is it is simply not enough, sufficient enough to say, oh, here, lack of study, because we don't have such study in this area. Okay, but then we have to go a little bit further, all right, to articulate. I like the verb he used to describe, to articulate. Okay, do not only stop there, lack of study. Then what? So many areas that lack of study. But why you particularly want to identify this? Okay, so provide, articulate, say more about why this is such a significant area to go further study. Do you understand? There are so many areas so many in the whole world, but why particularly this one? So it's just not simply enough to say, oh, this is lack of study period. No. Okay, go further. Articulate. Remember this verb, articulate. Provide solid rationale to justify, okay, why this is lack of study. Then, but why? A little bit more, okay? Why this is worth your time for further investigation. And then I also like this one, okay? Oh, the study has been done, particularly overseas or ABC countries or in city or in remote area, but not in this particular context. Fine, okay, great. But once again, please go further. Why this particular context significant, important? All right. So I think his reminders is think about, is it because of the social, cultural factors, reasons, legal aspect of this particular context? What makes this particular context important for you to spend the time to do further investigation? Okay. And thirdly, a lot of time this is what we say, right? Oh, study has been done on university students, so I want to do secondary. Fine, but then again go further. Why is it important to study secondary students for you? Why not children? Why not young adults? Why not male or female? There are a lot more for you to articulate, okay? And lastly, you say that, oh, I want to find out more factors. What makes you think that there are more factors to be further investigated? So you need to provide more, okay, to say there must be some more factors. The existing factors are not sufficient, okay, for us to look at this issue. There must be more, okay, so provide more. So I think that these well-experienced supervisor is now pushing us, okay, to go a little bit further. And based on what he has just described, I also learned from him that my student right now, I think they need to articulate a little bit more, okay? These are not wrong, but just that we need to articulate more, okay, to provide more solid reasons. Any questions for this? Okay. So this is the backbone that you should be able to need to get started to identify that statement of law. Do you need a bit time? Like, let me give you 2 minutes to talk to your neighbors and to see your understanding. Go. See if, or like then if you cannot articulate, raise your hand. I will be happy to help. Okay. Now one more question for you is, yes, now we know we need to articulate more, right, to provide solid rationale. But how? How? Based on what? Based on what that we can able to articulate and to provide this solid rationale. How?
Investigating a problem that is currently occurring in our surrounding, for example.
Okay, surrounding. So what? So you are gonna what? Provide what based on your observation?
Not only observation, of course, based on solid proof, for example, like data or false data, statistically or with from media, and based on that we can put the conclusion. Oh, I need to find solution for these problems, for these issues.
Okay, so what Elsa has just described, based on some statistics or some report, some observations, like if this happens, for example, for years, this has been happening repeatedly, okay? You know that this is also an issue or problem, a phenomenon for all. And also when you are addressing this, it's not only you, but you know that for this particular context, this has been an issue that people have been mentioning for years.